handful of months have been pretty good for him.
Yep. And Tim Rivera still trucking along with Mono Black Devotion.
Yeah, and we're going to move on to game number 3 here. Oddly enough, given the matches that we've watched, and you can see we're in round number 8 here in Las Vegas, have not seen a lot of Black Devotion or Black-Green Devotion this particular weekend. So it looks like Gorman may be taking a mulligan here, but the Swamps are really not out in force. Though we do see them here, you've got Gorman splashing green for copies of Abrupt Decay in his main deck, and in his sideboard he has 1 Vraska and a couple of copies of Golgari Charm. Mono Black Devotion here for Rivera, and likes to have all those swaps instead.
Yeah, and I think that's a correct choice. I would want, especially in the, coming off the heels of Tom Ross's win and expecting so much of that deck prevalent here, I would not be wanting to mess around with Overgrown Tombs and Temple of Maladies. I would just want swamps. Last
weekend when Festus Resendez did win the Standard Open, he beat David Bauer playing Black-Green Devotion in the quarterfinals, a very skilled player. In the semifinals, he beat arguably the best Magic player in the world right now in Owen Turtenwald, playing Mono Black Devotion. And then in the finals, he beat the Washington State champion and multiple-time Pro Tour player, Josh Ravitz, in the finals playing Black-Green Devotion. The common bond outside of those 3 players being great Magic players and playing a very similar deck, none of them had Farika's Cures, Drowning Sorrows, no hate. We take a look at the sideboards here. Gorman, for example, 3 copies of Farika's Cure. He's got some lower to the ground removal, 2 Doom Blades. These players have no interest in losing to the red decks this weekend.
Rivera with 2 Ratchet Bombs in the sideboard. People are coming prepared now.
Got Gorman going to be targeted by a Thoughtseize. You saw him mulligan down to 5. He's looking, is Rivera at a Thoughtseize, a Pack Rat, a Desecration Demon, and a Mutavault. So there's never a great time to mulligan to 5, but now's a pretty poor time for Vinnie.
In Mono Black Mirrors, people were just compelled to keep hands that are not very good because you're playing against so many Duresses and Thoughtseize post board that your just card count matters so much. So Vinnie's hands must have been terrible to warrant mulliganing twice.
BioBlight's going to get that out of the way. Gorman draws a card. It's a Mutavault, untimely for him. As good as Mutavault is, and it will serve for 2, he does have a copy of Underworld Connections in hand, but was not able to play it.
Well, the damage does add up in the mirror match.
Certainly.
People think it's a pure control matchup. The life total is strangely relevant at various times, so these little shots from Mutavault do count.
Rivera does have an Underworld Connections that he can deploy right now, but he's going to go simply with Pack Rat before passing the turn back over to Gorman. Gorman will take a draw here. It is a swamp, so now Underworld Connections is online if he'd like to cast it.
And I can respect that play from Tim. I mean, if he plays Underworld Connections, imagine Vinnie just goes on tap, 4th lane, hit you with my 2 Mutavaults. Now you're down to 12. If you activate Connections, you're at 11. And now all of a sudden, if the game goes on for a long time, you're liable to get killed by Grave Merchants or just random creatures off the top.
Vinnie with 3 mana. There's your Underworld Connections on the Mutavault. So this is a way for Gorman to be able to catch up. And of course, the Mono Black version has no great way of getting that off the table. However, Rivera can opt to race if he'd like, and he has the perfect card to do it with Pack Rat.
Yeah, he may not care. I mean, he might go straight to a damage race plan.
Rivera picking up a swamp for the turn. We know about the connections in the hand, Devour Flesh as well, but not actually a lot of action. So it might be forced, he might be forced, to play a Pack Rat game.
And it's not so bad here. He's got a lot of leftover lands in his hand. And if something goes wrong here with this Pack Rat, if he's hit with BioBlight, he has an Underworld Connections he can leave in his hand. And so he has some way to build back up in the event that Vinnie is able to find his copy of BioBlight.
Gorman will activate Connections and take a draw. You see Rivera moving in on the Pack Rat plan. Looks like another copy of Underworld Connections, but more importantly for Gorman, a BioBlight has been found. So another activation here, and Vinnie will take a draw. It looks like a Dark Betrayal has been found, so he's working his way back into this thing.
And it wouldn't surprise me right now if Tim readjusts here and just deploys Underworld Connections this turn in the face of the active mana. So Tim here, we'll see what he does here. I'm curious to see if he's willing to commit any more to this Pack Rat, or if he wants to readjust and go to Underworld Connections. It's a big risk if you get hit with BioBlight this turn. And Underworld Connections is an attractive alternate plan. The upside of Pack Rat, though, is also huge.
Yeah, and BioBlight's going to clear all these away, so Rivera moving in on that plan, and it ends up maybe coming back to hurt him a little bit here. We're going to find out. Gorman's done a really, even though he's mulligan to 5, he's done a really nice job of undoing it.
Well, he's Connections twice now, going to a 3rd time.
Yeah.
So he's now in fact, in front on card count.
His life total's not very low.
That was the one turn. You know, if that works out for Tim, he almost certainly wins the game. It's a big risk. He took it, and he caught the bad end of it.
Well, now he's got to switch plans and move to connections. So now can he keep up, especially playing against a deck that can remove connections?
Yeah, this is the stage of the game where Vinnie is better equipped to fight, both because he has better tools in his main deck and because he's already out in front of the race.
So now here's an activation. Gorman's going to go down to 14. Picks up a card. It's a copy of Devour Flesh. He's got at least one Gray Merchant in hand, maybe two. So he's going to take one more. Go down to 13. And there's an Overgrown Tomb that's going to come into play tapped and pass the turn back.
And that was the land he was really looking for there. And now that opens up his whole hand.
And Rivera does have an interesting card in his hand that certainly does matter at this point. Tim's going to start by activating Underworld Connections. Picks up a copy of Pack Rat. Now he's going to lead off with the rest. And that card I mentioned is Erebos. I think that's a huge deal now that Gorman won't be able to gain life, assuming that Rivera puts that in play. You see the hand there of 3 copies of Gray Merchant Asphodel, a Dark Betrayal, a Devour Flesh, and a Desecration Demon.
Well, right now, Tim is at risk of Vinnie simply going Gray Merchant for 6, Gray Merchant for E.
Yep. Kill you that way.
Yeah.
Gray Merchant's so powerful.
It's one of the best cards in the mirror match. I think people incorrectly leave it in their deck too often in matches where it isn't very good. But in the mirror match, to me, after the card drawers, it's the best thing going on.
Dark Betrayal going to bite the dust here. Rivera, he knows he's got to get Erebos God of the Dead on the table. Can't let Gorman gain life. Now have to see if he can figure out a way past him losing a bunch of life from these Gray Merchants. Assuming, of course, that Gorman just wants to cast them. Salgogary Guildgate is the draw here for Gorman.
It's tough to give up 2 draws from these connections here. Vinnie is going to do it, but it's not like that's the easiest play.
So in comes the Gray Merchant. A big drain, but no gain there for Gorman.
And Tim finding a Gray Merchant of his own, a huge draw here.
That'll also turn on Erebos to get in the red zone.
Yeah.
And Tim is going to cast that, so he actually gets to gain life. He gains 5, he goes up to 13. Gorman loses 5, and now in comes Erebos in the red zone. And we've got ourselves a racing situation here, and Gorman may have to block.
Yeah, he can't gain life. I mean, Erebos is in play, it's not going anywhere for the rest of the game. So he may have to choose this spot to chump block.
And as great as things have gone for Vinnie in this particular game, Erebos is kind of doing a lot of the work. Now Gray Merchant's got to get in the way, and his plan of just play Gray Merchant, hopefully kill you, well, that one's out the window.
Yeah, that was one big draw from Tim, and the game's completely swung around. And so many lines are cut off. Gray Merchant, as you mentioned, but he can no longer Devour Flesh himself to try to stave off lethal. He's got to, and he's just got a pure damage race at this point. Not the easiest thing to do.
These games can be swinging, but it feels like one of the most important cards in the mirror match is the God of the Dead.
Yeah, I've seen spots where it's not that impressive, but games like this where both players have a connections going and there's a board built up, it is the best thing going on.
There's a Gray Merchant going to come in and drain for 6 yet again. Rivera's going to go down to 7. But keep in mind, Gorman's not going to gain any life. Gorman has a Devour Flesh in hand. Might be the appropriate time to fire this off.
Letting Tim gain 4 life, though, right now is really rough.
I mean, it's not great, but I think he's got to put that out there right now because, you know, if Rivera was to draw and play a Mutavault, that messes everything up.
Yeah.
Rivera going to activate connections. Going to go down to 10. Pick up a mystery card. Time to take a draw yet again, and there is a Mutavault. So things would have gotten really bad there for Gorman if he didn't fire off that Devour Flesh now, but it was kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. There is a Mutavault. This will be a Pack Rat. Rivera can activate this Pack Rat right away. That'll turn on Erebos. Of course, these rat tokens do provide devotion. Here's a Devour Flesh. Get that thing out of the way. Gorman's not going to gain any life. Now Erebos is going to come in for 5. Gorman's already down to 3.
And Tim has completely turned it around. And it was just that Gray Merchant draw.
Yep. Gorman going to take a draw now. It's a copy of Thoughtseize. That one couldn't be worse. Desecration Demon's not doing much. And in a game that I actually thought Vinnie Gorman may come back to win here, given, the mulligan of 5, but undoing that with the 2 copies of Underworld Connections, the timely Bile Blight on the Pack Rat, and the Gray Merchants in hand, Tim Rivera has done a very impressive job of getting this game back.
The Black Mirror match is very swingy and very skill intensive.
And I think Gorman's looking at his hand right now saying, man, I know the mulligan of 5 hurt, but I thought I was actually going to win this one.
It looked like he had it completely turned around.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of Gray Merchants in his hand. Tim with no pressure. Looked like it was going to be easy sailings, but Erebos cut off an angle of attack, and then Erebos started attacking, and Vinnie not with a lot of answers.
Had Dark Betrayal, had Devour Flesh. I mean, it feels like he had everything. But again, that's just the power of Erebos in the matchup. And I think Gorman, he doesn't want to concede. I think this is a situation where he can't believe he's going to lose this game.
He's trying to see if there's some sort of out here. But
what can I connections into?
Right.
The problem is that he can't gain any life. I think that's the big deal.
And these all 3 attackers are lethal next turn because Tim gets a draw step and also has connections in play, so he can make the rats 4/4s. Yeah.
And we can't forget about the Mutavault as well, and that is going to do it. Tim Rivera, Standard Open champion from our Las Vegas Invitational last year, is going to win this match over Vinnie Gorman, 2-1. Impressive stuff here from Rivera with Mono Black Devotion.
Yeah, a huge swing.